So which is it? Walking or running? Which one should you be doing? Which one is best? Well, the answer to that is first a question, like what's your goal? So for a lot of women who are in midlife, they're asking that question based on which one is going to burn the most calories. And the reason behind that is which one is going to help them lose weight the fastest. So here's the real answer, and the number one thing is you're going to do what you enjoy, and consistency trumps intensity. So I'll have to say that, but I also want to tell you, monitor your results. So if you don't have a smart scale that's measuring not just your body weight, but it's telling you how much of it is body fat percent and how much skeletal muscle mass. That's the biceps and the triceps and the chest and the back and the legs and the glutes. Which one burns the most fat? So if walking burns more fat for fuel, a higher percent of fat for fuel while you're doing it. But think about which one burns more calories at a faster rate for the same amount of time. That would be running, right? So when we ask which one burns the most fat, it's not an easy answer. You really have to understand the question before we can get to the answer. So let's do it again. When you walk, if you're walking at a comfortable, easy pace, self-selected, you walk out the door, you go for a walk at your pace, not the dog's, not your partner, not because you're supposed to get your heart rate up, just you go for a walk. That's probably about 70% of the fuel you're using is fat. So that sounds really great, but you're not burning it very quickly. If you go running, for most of us, even if it's a comfortable pace, and if it's really comfortable, your percent of fat used for fuel will go up. If you're a very conditioned runner and you're going out the door to run at your own comfortable pace, you are burning more fat for fuel. If you're a new runner, it's probably feeling like a pretty significant effort. Your percent of fat used for fuel goes down. However, if we did each of these activities, walking for 30 minutes, running for 30 minutes, which one burns the most calories? The running. We're going at a higher intensity, so realize that we're going to burn more calories with a lower percent of fat as fuel, or we're going to burn fewer calories but with a really high percent of fat. In the end, they may be more equivalent in terms of how much fat was burned, but higher intensity activities almost always burn a little bit more fat after. It's called the afterburn or the excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. It means after a really high intensity exercise session, you'll burn extra calories, more energy expenditure, because your body's doing all kinds of magical repair for muscle tissues and restoring circulation and respiration, things that got taxed in your body for up to maybe 24 hours afterward. Maybe it's only 8 if you didn't work that hard. Maybe it's 36 if you worked really hard and ran a long way. You're probably not burning many additional calories after you go for a comfortable walk. And that's okay. There are other benefits. So come back to summarize this with me, right? So if you're just looking at, I have 30 minutes and I want to burn the most calories, and if you can run, then you're going to burn the most calories, and that would be the answer. But if you're a female in midlife asking this question, which one is better to support weight loss, weight management, maybe abdominal, visceral, belly fat loss, my answer will be different. And here's how. Let's look again at just step by step the pros and the cons to each one. Number one, walking is really easy. Most of us, if we can walk, we're walking around during the day, we can do that. It doesn't take any special skills. So that works. With running, probably want a pair of special running shoes, and it may not be appropriate for maybe your joints or a condition that you have. If you're a woman who suffers from incontinence or prolapse, you may not want that additional impact. Every time you land, when you are leaving the ground, as you do with running, you hit the ground with 4 times your body weight. You do the math. That's 4 times your body weight, the impact on your joints. So, running doesn't automatically cause knee issues, but it can aggravate knee issues if you already have them, or you have poor form, or didn't choose your parents really well, and you're not perfectly skeletally aligned. Some of us are just born that way. The hunger hormone, and if you know, it's called ghrelin, but your hunger hormone sometimes is more inspired and worse after running a higher intensity activity than after walking. Not necessarily more hungry there, but ghrelin can be a bigger problem, inspiring more cravings, just more desire. You often hear about runners compensating, like feeling like, oh, I went for a run today, I can do that. Or, I'm going to eat this, but it's okay because I'm going to run tomorrow. And that adds up over time. And women in midlife may not have that latitude for that actually to be true. But if you are running, it's often easier to let that creep into a range we often call no benefits zone. So there are zones of walking at low level where you're very comfortable, and high intensity interval training where you might be sprinting. But it's that area in between. There are not a lot of benefits there. And if you spend much time there, 30-minute run there may not be a problem. But at 45 to 60 minutes for most midlife women, what tends to happen is cortisol levels go up. They do during all activity, all exercise. That's natural, that's normal. So we expect to see that. But what we want to see is that after exercise, those cortisol levels come back down. In fact, we feel more resilient, more relaxed after it. And that's why many of us choose to exercise. But what can happen to women in midlife is that if we exercise too long in that moderate range, cortisol level goes up during and it continues to go up. Doesn't have that corresponding drop afterward. And that's where chronically doing things, keeping you at elevated cortisol levels, can have a negative and deleterious effect on your core. So visceral belly fat, if you find you've been exercising, you cannot figure out why am I gaining belly fat or why am I not losing it, you may actually be doing a kind of exercise that your body is just saying, this isn't working for me right now. And it's going to be a while before it works for you again. It doesn't mean forever. So if you love a good endurance run, there's room for it. You can sprinkle it in, but you may not want to do that every time. Start mixing it up and you might find you get better results. So walking, on the other hand, doesn't have that. Even if you go for a 45 or a 60-minute walk, doesn't have that negative cortisol effect. So long as you keep the intensity low enough. You're not forcing yourself to go at a certain pace or keep your heart rate at a certain level. Cortisol, walking, especially outdoors, tends to decrease cortisol levels. More optimally, your cortisol level will be better after a walk than when you left before the walk. So huge consideration depending on what's your stress level right now. If you are a runner, you may choose that walking is actually going to give you better results today than running would, just because of the day you've had. So a lot of considerations there. Let's come back to weight loss. First of all, you're a woman who's in midlife and you're here. Don't forget, number 1, subscribe, click the bell, and you'll get notified every time there's a new video. But you're probably here because midlife changes, maybe symptoms, or you're post-menopause, you're dealing with those symptoms and maybe some muscle loss, maybe some body composition changes, not the way you'd hoped, and you have a little bit more fat or bone loss. But any of those things, we want to also look at, we want to be metabolically healthy for the rest of our lives. So we're talking longevity. When you want to get rid of visceral belly fat specifically, If you wanted to lose weight and it was just a calories in, calories out equation, if we were going to say you have 30 minutes and we wanted to burn the most calories, what you want to look at is what impact is that activity on all those calories having on your hormone levels. So back to, again, your cortisol levels, that ghrelin that might tell you you're going to have snacks, snacky cravings the rest of the day. That's probably going to sabotage your what's best for joints. Probably walking, more favorable, less risk of injury. Doesn't mean that running has to cause issues for knees or hips or lower back, but has a greater tendency to do that, or definitely to aggravate those issues that already exist. If we're talking about decreasing cortisol levels to optimize your stress level, walking is probably your ticket. If you're talking about burning the most fat, what might be is sprint interval training, also known as high intensity interval training. Don't get all caught up in the alphabet soup. We're talking about getting breathless. In about 30 seconds or less, 15 to 30 seconds, get breathless, totally recover again and do it again. That's what we're talking about. When you do that, what we're doing is helping you to optimize fat burning, and we're not bumping up cortisol levels because we're just elevated at a very high intensity for a very short amount of time. It's kind of like we're sneaking it in there before anybody notices and then recover completely. So we're okay. The elevation of cortisol just isn't there. So there's an elevation of blood sugar just enough to get us through the work and give the muscles the fuel to do it, and then it comes back down. So there's no problem there with elevating cortisol levels. That can be a huge advantage. So if you were really looking for what's the best ticket, my recommendation is start with walking. We all should have walking, getting adequate steps in our day, every day. Aim for 6,000 if you're not there yet. If you want to do more, go ahead and do more, but not if you're not resistance training. If you're not resistance training, make sure you get total body, so all your major muscle groups get worked at least twice weekly. So get the walking in, make sure you're weight training, then increase your steps if you want to. But then the icing on the cake would be for me to have you do high intensity interval training, getting breathless a few times each session, a few times a week. That's it. 15 to 30 seconds, get breathless, totally recover. Do that 4 to 6 times during the workout, 2 or 3 times during the week. Now you're getting the best of decreasing cortisol levels from walking, so you can open the door to fat burning. You're doing the high intensity interval training to actually help you burn more fat for hours, even days after the workout. And the strength training increases fat burn after workouts even more than high intensity interval training does. So the best of all worlds is right there. Let me know, are you a runner? Are you a walker? Hey, by the way, if you're looking for a little bit more help, not just with walking or running or sprint interval training, or maybe with interval training, you're not quite sure what to do and you're not strength training yet, perfect opportunity, the 10-day Hot Not Bothered Challenge. The next one is starting soon. You can get in and learn more right here.